If you want to be more personal, more intimate, more connected in your relationship, you need to stop taking what the other person is doing personally.
Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
I'm Tom Rutledge, and with me is our producer, Patrick Newman, and the illustrious Dr. Alan Berger. Doctor, how are you?
Well, Tom, we have a rainy day here in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. The temperature is warming up. I mean, it's going to be 70 degrees is what they predicted today. So spring is on the way. Yep. Springtime is here. And the plan for today is to go out and get a bird feeder that is squirrel proof. The squirrels keep stealing my bird feeder.
You bet.
And they hide them in places where I swear I can't find them. I don't know where those guys, and these are little metal like boxes, right? Where you put the seeds inside, birds hanging on them. And it's wonderful. It's right outside our kitchen window. So in the morning when I'm making breakfast, I'm visited by woodpeckers, blue jays, cardinals, finches.
Yeah, I love that too. We love our birds, and Dee Dee just had a birthday, and one of the presents I gave her was a new bird feeder, and I swear you after a while you begin to recognize certain birds. I mean, they become part of the community. It's great.
Yep. So we have that going on. The other thing is that a young deer, I don't know how she died, but she's in the back, and we are being visited by swarms of vultures now.
Yep.
They are coming to feast.
They're doing their job.
Doing their job, man. They're doing their job. And the family where this deer came from came by yesterday to pay their respects, I think, is that's what I made up about it.
Mm-hmm.
They all circled around and stood there for a few minutes and then moved on. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was really interesting, man. It was like they were going to a funeral. I swear to God.
Yeah. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about how emotional sobriety is seen through the lens of philosophy. It's like, but I mean, I think one of the things that, why we need philosophy is because we've used so much of our brain power as human beings to just to separate. Maybe this is the downside of differentiation, or a differentiation we don't want, that we differentiate ourselves so much from everything else. We separate ourselves that we forget that we're part of it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what did the old philosophers used to say? We are the bridge between animal and God. Mm-hmm. That we're a part animal and we're part God. Mm-hmm. And that we're in this weird place. But, look, we can think of, because when you guys threw out this idea of us, let's talk about emotional sobriety and philosophy. And I had to really step back. And, the truth of it is emotional sobriety is a philosophy.
Yes, it is.
The whole ideology, it's a whole set of beliefs. It's based on faith. It's based on a certain reasoning, right? There's wisdom, it's a wisdom-based, approach to life. And, it's definitely an appropriate topic today. And I was excited.
I mean, yeah. And as often is the case, because, you guys often describe me as, what is the thing where we say, ready, aim, fire. And you say, I'm like ready, fire, aim. It's like, yeah. Yeah. After Patrick and I talked about it, and I thought, this is a great idea. I'm going to do this. And then I thought, okay, well, now what do I got to do? And so one of the things I've been thinking about is just what's the difference between philosophy and psychology? So what did I do? Because I'm a brilliant man. I went and asked Google. For me, the psychology is how the mind works, how the human beings think, but to me, philosophy is kind of a pan back. And you actually, I can't remember your exact words just then, but you said, I step back. That's what you said. And I think that's what we do when we look at that. And one of the things I think it has to do with, for me anyway, and some people who are actual, better philosophers than I can correct us and give us some feedback on this. But I think one of the things it has to do with is we are always talking about living congruently with our value system. That's such a big part of emotional sobriety. And then, there's that value system that we have, and that's just basically a standard of ethics, but we take that not just about how to treat other people. We take that in emotional sobriety and are applying ethics to our intrapersonal world. How am I treating? Let's stop excluding ourselves from our ethical standards. And then when we go, and the book I wrote a long time ago was called Earning Your Own Respect. And that was what, to me anyway, the essence of that was living in congruence on a day-to-day basis with your value system. And in order to do that, the point I made in the book was you have to know what your value system is. It seems like a fairly simple point, but a lot of times we haven't really investigated that. And I think that's what philosophy is a lot of times, is what do I really believe? And I don't mean just believe, don't kill anybody for no good reason, or let's not steal, let's be nice to each other. But I thought I was thinking we could have a conversation today that's even more intimate than that. And I would want to put the disclaimer on this. If we're talking about our personal value systems, and I'm not here to suggest that you guys, share anything more than you want to share, but it's like, if we're talking about our personal value systems, the disclaimer I want to say is it's just us. That's just our individual value system. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, that all of us share in the three of us, our value system is that we are not fundamentalist in any sense, in meaning that we are not exclusive in the sense of you should believe what I believe, or else you're wrong or you're fucked or whatever, you're going to the bad place or whatever that is. So it's like I have a wonderful friend named Bendel that died a few years ago. He was a brilliant man and truly I think he was a born philosopher. But one of the things he would say that helped me a lot in my life was he said that he said beliefs are choices. And it's a very simple statement, but he, and what he would go on, and if you ask him about that a little further, it's like most wise people, you have to ask him. He wasn't just going to grab you by the collar and tell you what he thinks, but you don't have to objectively prove your belief system. You don't have to convince anyone. You don't have to win people over. You don't have to recruit. It's like you can choose a belief system. And it was so amazing for me to over a period of time to kind of integrate that idea. And that's what I think about with this stuff, is that it's really hard. It's hard to be congruent with my value system in the bigger picture in the most pan-back position, unless I have some idea of what my deepest belief system is. And that to me is about what the fuck we're doing here. What is the human experience all about? And it's like, and that has varied through my life in terms of what I believe. And the main difference today is here is a belief system I have chosen. When we're young, we know how the world works. We understand how the universe works. And then we get older and we realize we don't know shit. And that's the gift.
You take any philosopher, any great philosopher, and you will see over time their beliefs change. Yes. Their philosophy changes as they mature, as they are confronted with inconsistencies in their thought. And see, this brings up a very important point, is if we could be as open to those shifts and changes in our life, then we will mature and grow along these lines, that we will differentiate. Like I said before, it's my belief that is hardwired in us for us to move in the direction of being more and more complete, more and more differentiated, right? That seems to me to be a basis of who we are. But what happens is, and I love this, is recently I've been reading Dr. Michael Vincent Miller's book called Intimate Terrorism. And one of the things he talks about is our anxiety makes us want to hold on to things as they are or as we think they should be.
Yes.
And so that process of maturation, which is letting go or allowing yourself to be challenged, right? And to then confront, you know what, this isn't working. I mean, Dr. Phil made that so popular. How's that working for you? You know, we as psychotherapists, we've been asking people that for a long time. Started way before Dr. Phil popularized the idea. You know, we said, is that working? Pay attention to what that's doing in your life. Fritz used to say, what are you doing to yourself and what are you doing to others with that belief, with that behavior? That's is great. To make you aware of what's the impact it has on you as a person and what impact are you having on someone else? So one philosopher that is a lot of people consider to be someone who influenced Fritz Perls a lot in Gestalt therapy was Heidegger. And his philosophy, somebody developed based on his philosophy, Dasein analysis, right? Which was existential analysis, which so many people talk about. But his famous phrase, Heidegger's, is being in the world. You know, being in the world. How are we in the world and what happens in the way we're being in the world? And he says that we're so influenced by all the forces around us. And that because we generate meaning in everything we do, is we do want to find a way to fit in. We do want to find a way to be a part of. And so then we make all of these compromises to be what we think we have to be a part of society, be a part of our family, to be part of our relationship or whatever it is. And look, that's what at the heart of this emotional sobriety stuff is looking at. How does our emotional dependency manifest itself in our relationships with other people? And what is the impact that has on our being in the world?
Yes.
You know, how are we in this world? How do we show up in this world? And, you know, that emotional dependency, I think, creates a certain kind of emotional vulnerability. Yeah. We call it sensitivity. I'm not so sure that's the right word for it, Tom. You know, somebody says, I'm very sensitive, you know, and as we look at it, no, you're very dependent. That makes you very sensitive or reactive. I even replace sensitive with, no, you're very reactive. Sensitive would be being sensitive to yourself and to other people and how you feel. But I think a lot of people confuse sensitivity with reactivity. See, our emotional...
Absolutely. You could be sensitive and not defensive. And that's part of what we're trying to learn to do is the idea is because because I think this is as you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, this is how this fits into some of the work that we've already been talking about and doing with emotional sobriety is the idea is you and I are always looking for places within ourselves, if we're trying to help each other out, but if we're also in our jobs, what are we looking for? We're looking for things that get in people's way. I love that idea. It's so freeing as a psychotherapist to understand, because I've got a guy in my head that will tell me once I'm working with somebody, I got to figure it all out for them. And it's like, that guy's never gone anywhere, but he doesn't have a really active role anymore in the work. But because my belief is that I like the people, and Irv Yalom, one of our favorites together, is one of them that I hear this from a lot. Is no, what we're doing is we're helping people get out of their own way. We're helping to identify the blocks to their natural growth, and so that they can move on. And part of that natural growth, and we've already established this theme in this conversation, which is just like our flow in recovery, if we see ourselves, and let's just go ahead and say, if we see ourselves as practitioners of philosophy. And see, I think philosophy, this is the thing I have different than when I was in college going to philosophy classes. It's like everybody I read or everybody that I talk to about any of this stuff is saying, no, this is material. This is not just airy fairy stuff. This is stuff we need to be working to apply in our lives. And as a result of that, we're always going to be works in progress. We're always going to be. So part of what you're talking about the sensitivity and and I'm saying the defensiveness is that people, we have to be open to whatever we believe. When we find, or when somebody points out a contradiction, that's when, you see this a lot with religion but other belief systems too. It's like people get defensive rather than curious. Like we talk about with emotional sobriety. No, it's like, wow, you're right. That doesn't quite work in that case. That doesn't, and we got to get out. And I think the mindset of philosophy takes us out of the place of all or none thinking. Also, it's not a matter of saying, oh, well, if that's the contradiction, then it turns out I was wrong and somebody else is right. It's like, no, I don't know that yet. Let's go look at it. What are we seeing? What can we learn from this? And I like the idea that in this, so far, what you and I've done that's new for me today is the idea that we can say we can be sensitive and not defensive.
Yes,
and to me, that's a takeaway for me for sure. Is the idea is because you're right. People use sensitive as often but you use it as a way of saying, please walk on eggshells around me.
Well, the paradox, I love the paradox in emotional sobriety of when you become more differentiated, you actually then become better in your relationships and you're able to love more comprehensively, yes. Right? Can we talk a little bit about that?
It's such a powerful thing you're saying. The way Walt Kempler told me this, he says, if you want to be more personal, more intimate, more connected in your relationship, you need to stop taking what the other person is doing personally. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a direct correlation between those two things. Mm-hmm. It's, just to go back to Heidegger a little bit. So what he really focused on, what is the meaning of our being? Like, how do we give meaning to our existence? And it's so interesting is that when you start to really unpack this emotional dependence, it is based on this idea of our personal importance, that it's all about us. And so the meaning we give at one point is to make ourselves so darn important in everything. And that we see everything is a reaction to us, is a reflection about how people feel about us. We become the center of the universe. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that happens is that, as we've seen in the Thursday night group, Tom, and people writing into us, is when people get this idea, it allows them to be a part of the world in a much better way. Instead of being so reactive and being hurt and taking so many things personally, they're able, I think you used the word flow with other people's experience. I think that's what you said on Thursday night. Right. I loved that statement you made. It's about how we start to flow with our experience instead of end up in conflict all the time.
Well, speaking, and this is connected, believe it or not, going back to what you said, Patrick, about paradox. You're right. We take this stuff and we become self-absorbed in the sense it's all about me. And boy, do I have some stories about that in my life where I could tell about how I would see that. Right. And do it that way. Ultimately, I think where, at least now I'm speaking from my own particular belief system, but ultimately the paradox is we do land back on just focusing on ourselves. And it's like, but it's not about how the world is treating me. It's about what am I doing with what's here? I want to read something if I can find it here. It's on my phone. I wrote down a quotation. I was reading. I've become very aware of Marcus Aurelius. They say the last of the good emperors. And he wrote a book that's out now. It's called Meditations, and it's like he wrote it only for himself. The man wrote all the time. He wrote every day. And it's like, he didn't write for anybody but himself. It's a powerful book. But I wrote a quotation down from this because I was trying to help a client of mine that was run through some troubles, and let me see if I can find it here. Here it is. It says, look at the past, empires succeeding empires. From that, extrapolate the future. The same thing, no escape from the rhythm of events, which is why, now here comes the part that sounds dark at first. I'm going to talk about it just for a second afterwards, which is why observing life for 40 years is good as 1,000. Would you really see anything new? And, I think about you with this, Patrick, too. So sometimes the discouragement we have in how the world doesn't seem to change. And we're seeing so much of that in our world now. And so in that, I looked at that and I said, okay, so he's saying basically nothing's changing. And it's like, I'm thinking I'm 60, getting ready to be 68 years old. I'm going like, we're watching what's happening in the world now, going like, okay, I get that. It seems like nothing's changing. So here's what I wrote in response to a client of mine who was having some trouble with some of this stuff. I haven't actually read this, so you guys can tell me if it makes some sense to you or help me change it. The insight, and I put in parentheses a perspective that hopefully or that rescues hope, is that the truth simply is that humankind repeats the same damn cycles, essentially unchanged. Then maybe we come to the human experience not to change it, but to make good use of it, to improve ourselves as individuals. Maybe Earth is like a tumbler for polishing stones. Maybe the design is not for us to change the world, but to remain devoted to that, even without the reward of successfully changing anything beyond our own selves. And so the idea is it becomes about us every day. How can I be a better person?
Yep. And look, and we got to put this right now. And I love that, Tom. And, we don't want to ignore the context that our discussion today is taking place in, right? Russia has invaded Ukraine. There's a lot of people that really were loving their democracy and freedom that are now being, threatened by Putin and the Russian army to take away their freedoms, and they're fighting for their freedom. Mm-hmm. Not unlike we fought the British back in the American Revolution, and there's an unbelievable battle going on at this particular point in time. And, when you say that it seems to recapitulate other things, I can't tell you that, to me, the beginning of World War II started this way, with Hitler invading these other countries and imposing his will on them. And, it's so my emotional sobriety is being really tested right now. I mean, it really is, because I think we're right at a critical point in time in terms of the future of what's going to happen in Europe, but not only what's going to happen in Europe. Like we realized before in World War II, we can't be an isolationist, take an isolationist mentality, because there's no such thing anymore. And if anything, the global economy has shown us that now, that we really, to me, need to take a very firm stance and say this is not okay. Our good friend Michael McGee wrote me a thing last night imploring. He says, this is what I sent to Congress and to our president, imploring him to take strong action to stop this, and to say this is not going to happen on our watch. So we'll see what happens with this thing. Yeah. But, it's so funny because we put this in the context, and now many of us are faced with, there's a possibility that if we do intervene in a way that's really going to make a difference, that Putin's going to see this as a declaration of war. He threatened that. He says, if we stop the oil, if we, put sanctions against the oil and gas, he's going to see this as because that's his moneymaker, right? Right. That's where Russia is getting all of the economy is based on their gas and oil production. So look, we're really confronted, and not different than the crisis that every individual has to confront at some point in their life about what do you do Do you honor your freedom, or do you, like you said?
And I want to, because as you're describing that, when I'm thinking, okay, it's easy. I'm putting myself in sort of this hypothetical listener's point of view and going, it's easy to hear the part when I'm sitting here saying it comes down to, if nothing's changing, then I can use this as a way of, I'm going to use, my job is to become a better person, to evolve, to be a better soul. If there's reincarnation, then this is what I'm going to work on that. I'm going to do better. But and then when you're talking about, we have to as a community, as nations, we have to make this thing. It's like, to me, where I'm sitting, I'm going, no, this is the same thing, because what we're talking about is always, rather than see the power as outside of ourselves, to see that we have to, every individual and every individual community and every individual nation, everything, but it starts with the individuals. Individuals have to face our own, we have to face our own belief system. What is the right thing for me to do? Because a lot of times, because I'm a big believer that some of the greatest, and I include myself in this, by the way, because I think I'm way guilty of this throughout my life, is the greatest harm has been done by bystanders. Yes. People who just stand, and they're perfectly good people who think good things and have good value systems, but it's not their fight. It's not, it's not affecting me. It's not in my backyard. So, I'm not, go ahead.
I was just going to say, one of the things I'm most grateful for in recovery is that this idea has been hammered in me and others over and over of help yourself by helping others. Mm-hmm. Action, rather than, act your way to right thinking, rather than thinking your way to right action. Mm-hmm. And, yes. Yeah, I think my politics are collectivism. We're stronger together than we are separated. And collectivism in the pursuit of dignity. That's something I got from my girlfriend a while ago. Dignity for every person, food, shelter, healthcare, education, even internet. Make sure that everybody has that. And then, that would necessitate a harmony with the natural world and a kind of, and so all these things, but in the absence of any broader collectivism, that maybe we don't have at the moment or we're working towards, just trying to manifest that through my individual actions and get out of my own head. And in the case of emotional sobriety, to do the work of, being differentiated and trying to take what is, aligning myself with reality, and then making my decisions within that framework. I think that's kind of what I'm putting together. And there is a lot about reality that frightens me. Mm-hmm. And so it takes constant work to be reframing and kind of figuring out within my limited set of choices, what's the best that I can do, and how can I most honor this broader interest that I have in the collectivist project.
Absolutely. Well, it brings us back to the thing that the three of us have talked about through the whole time we were doing even the earlier podcast, the start right here. It's that positive opportunism to see difficult situations, to see even horrendous situations as opportunities. How can I use this situation to become a better person? How can I, and it's always about, and it goes to that little nutshell that I repeat a lot, which is always move towards your demons. They take their power from your retreat. And people often don't stay with that long enough to really get the meaning of the second part of that. They get their power from your retreat means that the bad or the evil does not have to even increase for it to gain more power if we're cringing or running the other way. It's like, we need to lean into this. And to do the right thing and to encourage, I'm not trying to make other people do what, but encourage others to take action. When you realize you're talking to somebody who's like-minded, I mean, that helps me a lot. I mean, sometimes people who are better at taking action than I am, and there are lots of them that through political stuff or through just day-to-day stuff in our community, it's like, it helps me to sort of be appropriately guilted, not by what they've said to me, but by just basically comparison. This person is doing a lot more than I am, and it's like, I don't like to feel that way, but that's healthy guilt. That's conscience. It's like if I'm aware you're doing something that I could do and I'm not doing it, I rather than be sensitive, like you're saying, Alan, and say and defensive, to go like, I can do more. And we all know people. We can name people who are role models to us, but it doesn't have to be just the famous people out there. It can be the people that we know. I could just list a bunch of people through this COVID thing that basically, the people that I know, clients and friends of mine that just hit the ground running to be helpful to people. Yeah. With that. And it's like, and I'm a procrastinator, I'm an introvert, and I'm lazy. And it's like, I don't mean any of that stuff in any condemning way, but those are characteristics that really can get in my way. And so I try, I'm doing my best these days to be inspired by those people so that I can go and be more like them.
In the last week, I've received messages from both of you guys just checking in and making sure I'm doing okay. And that's no small thing to me. That means a lot to me. And it's very, sustaining. And I try to take that inspiration and I try to check in with other people. And, where there's an opportunity to just kind of reach in and do something, I guess. Yeah.
Well, you're important.
You're very important.
You are important to me, and I wanted you to know that. And I knew you were confronting, a real, heavy decision in your life, and I didn't want you to feel alone.
Thank you.
It's. I describe my mind sometimes like a colander. It's like it's just like how much energy have I leaked in all these years that I could actually use real life energy, but I worry about things that just worried. I'm just worried. Worriers like me, it's like we punch holes in our own gas tank, and then we complain about bad gas mileage. What we have to do is we got to figure out how to patch up those holes. Yeah. It's like, and it's a long standing thing. I doubt I'm happy if it resolves itself entirely. But even in I was telling a friend of mine yesterday, even in my I think new improved version of myself at this point, it's like I'm just leaking, all the time. Now I can bring my attention back and actually what I told him was I said I have all that anxiety that I'm aware of, but I'm a lot calmer about it now. Yeah. Which is an intrapersonal principle that I think is really important. As we can realize that we don't have to go to the lowest common denominator, and I don't have to hang out with the most depressed part of me. I don't have to hang out with the most anxious part of me. I can step back and be that person, that decision maker in me who's in charge, and use that observation that we talk about in therapy a lot, which is there is that it's one thing to say, I'm anxious. Another thing to say, I have this anxiety that is running, on this endless loop inside my head. I'm aware of, and I'm working on it. And it's like so that we can make decisions and not get distracted, and then basically use what we're talking about right now is kind of a call to arms to say, and we should be using at a time like this in our world history. Use this to look around and say, what can I do? It can be just something like pass something along. It can be, it can be make contact with other people. It could, rather than have an opinion that you think might be useful, but you're not going to say it to anybody, to put it out there.
I'm lucky that, lucky. I feel bad in some way that I'm not closer. I'd probably be one of those guys going into Ukraine to fight. I mean, I told her, I says, I'm an old Marine, but this old Marine still got a little bit of a fight in him.
Yeah. I saw a thing on Twitter where a former Miss Ukraine, for the Miss America had enlisted, It's like and some unfortunate Russian soldiers are going to get shot down by Miss Ukraine. It's like, and it's like, and
brother, 2 world heavyweight champs have volunteered to fight.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no, listen, it's a call to arms. It really is in so many ways.
I tell you what, the other thing that is worth thinking about, I think I got this idea from reading, I don't know if you've ever read the Dandelion Insurrection. There's three books. I've only read the first one, but I've had it for a while. Didn't read it for a long time because I thought I don't want to read a book that's called Dandelion something. It's like I don't know what that's about, but it's really a fictional thing, but it's about standing up. It's not all of this stuff. And one of the things that they do in the Dandelion Insurrection is by fighting, aggression with peace, is they really address the soldiers who are the aggressors, and because one of the things we know now psychologically is all those people that are soldiers for the Russian army, they're not bad people. They're not all bad people.
Several of the conscripts from the Russian army, because the Russian army is consisting mostly of conscripts. Several of them said that they were told they were going to be on exercises and not invading Ukraine. And so then when it turned into an invasion, they're going, what are we doing? I mean, so I think a lot of Russian people do not feel good about what's going on. And that's why I think it's important to differentiate, Putin from some of the Russian people. They're not all
even the Russian soldiers. It's like not to if I were stuck in that position, and I mean stuck even intrapersonally with my belief system. I'm not saying what they're doing is right. Period. It's like don't do that. But it's like the idea of learning to give people the benefit of the doubt to be able to say, if you're going to, if they're going to take that position, then they may have to pay the ultimate consequence. But it's like, could you think of better news to hear? Maybe this is very naive, but than to hear that the soldiers are putting down their guns and saying, we're not going to do that.
That's right. That's right. Not unlike what happened with Britain in America back in the American Revolution. There was a lot of British soldiers that said, what are we doing? I mean, why are we imposing our will on somebody else when they don't want it? I mean, what's that about? And there's a whole history of that. Well, look at great discussion. I would like to propose that our next thing is let's try to identify the philosophical principles that the ideas that emotional dependency stands on. Let's look at some of the concepts that it really is based on, and what is the philosophy behind emotional sobriety. Define what that means specifically.
Okay.
Can't wait to explore that with you guys.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Tend your life, tend your myth. Cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.